this. Now, it was talked about the other day that the Vuelta had had a couple of stages interrupted, cut short, changed route because of protests. Now, the issue that some people have, well, apart from the fact they want to be disruptive and quite clearly, well, there's one non-Palestinian flag on display. It is quite clearly a protest for Palestine. But the question is, why? What impact? It's, again, people not getting consequences for their actions. Why disrupt one of the three major tours in cycling for a cause that, well, probably a lot of the cyclists probably support? And so they've basically been very disruptive. They've knocked down barriers, etc. So um, the last stage was cancelled, and generally the last stage is the ceremonial entrance to the major city and shows off everything to do with the tour and nation that was doing it and everything else. And basically, it's not competitive in terms of overall outcome. The sprinters will have a bit of a go at it, but generally the GC contenders just don't compete against each other on the last day. So, in essence, before they got into Madrid, the race was called. People are blaming one team in particular for the protest. It's like, well, they're not the ones protesting. It just so happens to be that Premier Tech is being sponsored in part by the state of Israel. And so everyone's like whining and carrying on and complaining about this. And the point being, well, this isn't the first pro cycling team to have a nation state supporting it in direct or indirect methods. UAE team Emirates is supported or was supported by the United Arab Emirates. US Postal, when they raced under US Postal, which then became, I think, Garmin and are now, what are they? Are they still Team Garmin? Anyway, US Postal, when they were racing as US Postal, was in effect racing with US government money because it was funding by the US Postal Service, and that was one of the reasons why. Certainly one of the reasons why Armstrong was investigated and faced the consequences that he ultimately did so heavily, in addition to being stripped of his 7 Tour de France yellow jerseys, was because he received US government money whilst doping, and that the concern was that US government money had been used to promote illegal drug taking within the team and within the sport, and it certainly put a link to the US government that the US government really didn't want to have. So yeah, the idea that there's a nation state involved, it's not new. I don't know why they consider it something odd, but yeah, it's a sad thing. I don't get it. You want to protest? Fine, protest. Why are you disrupting the race? Why go to that extent? It's only going to tighten security going forward. It's going to turn people away from your concern, especially if I doubt there'd be many cycling supporters out there that appreciate the way in which the protest was carried out and the disruption to their race. Although I guess people tend to be tend to dissociate parts of their mindset like that. Yeah, it's sad. Funny that. I uh, it's yeah. I mean, interesting. See, look, there's violence directly tied to the rhetoric of certain people. Yeah, it's a disgrace to cycling. Well, there's a lot of things in cycling that can be regarded as a disgrace, but yeah, it's hard to look at that and believe otherwise. The fact that Spanish PM said beforehand he supported the protesters and everything else, that's quite a big claim to be made. And obviously he's a socialist. Hmm. Does that mean that you've got to be a socialist to support the Palestinian claims to statehood and position and everything else, or is it just they're the ones who are associated and can protest well? Meh. But it's ah, claiming that Israel, like Russia, should not be allowed to compete in international sport events. It's like, okay, I get it. You don't like Israel. You love Palestine, but what? Um, okay, yeah, there is a degree of the same sort of argument people are saying, well, if Russia's banned for various, like, is excluded because of what's happening in Ukraine, then the US should have, and England and the UK and Australia should have been excluded from 2003 till 2015-ish for Iraq and Afghanistan and other places. Um, it's an uneven application of ire. And the whole Icarus affair, uh, the the thing is, whilst I know how it came to light and everything like that, I think there's a lot more. Um, a lot of Western nations got away very luckily from all of that in terms of doping in sports and things like that. It was obviously alleged that the Russians had a state level system running, and therefore that's why they're being excluded from international sports as well. When the Russians weren't the main benefactors of what was going on in the Icarus affair in terms of who was receiving doping products and the number of high profile athletes that subsequently got caught doping or retired unexpectedly. Yeah, the Russians were a whipping boy in that case. I mean, if they're going to be serious about it, China would probably be set aside too for their swimmers. Good old turtle blood. But yeah, so yeah, the um, Spanish government is obviously quite left leaning, but it's just uh, doesn't help the Vuelta really because it's doesn't have the awareness of the Tour de France is the big one, but even the Giro d'Italia has more awareness, I think, than the Vuelta does. So, yeah, and well, there you go. This article explains why Madrid's mayor was countering the prime minister's viewpoint, because he's conservative. Duh, would make sense. It's just, yeah. Funny enough, I see. Here's the thing. This is now the second or third article on unrelated matters where the Danes, I would say, have grown a set, are becoming more outspoken and seemingly taking a more conservative position on things, which, hmm, I'd always thought that they were more of the social democracy. I mean, they've got the whole commune in, was it the Christiania? I can't remember the name exactly. It's a section of um, what is the capital of Denmark? brains failed all of a sudden. Uh, yeah, but basically it's an unregulated commune, and it's been accepted to be that and left as that. They're very progressive, but all of a sudden regressive. But all of a sudden they've taken a very conservative viewpoint on things. So that's kind of interesting. Watch this space, I suspect. Anyway, um, hopefully everything. Sorry, next year's Tour de France starts with a stage in Barcelona. Hopefully everything will be solved by then. To do with these protests. They're not the protests I'd be concerned about in Barcelona. I'd be concerned about the Catalans because they've been agitating a bit more in recent years about independence and everything else. I'd be concerned more about Spanish people for next year. Maybe they don't get as much following internationally, but yeah, yeah. I don't think they've got as much awareness as like the Basques did, probably because they weren't as violent they didn't have their equivalent to ETA. I mean, they're still slightly violent, but no, their push for independence has always been, well, seemingly been more political in nature than violent.